In this lesson, we will talk about UI fundamentals with Java. So Java has historically had lots of different ways of doing UI programming. There were older libraries such as AWT and Swing. Now, those have now been replaced by a framework called JavaFX, right? JavaFX can be used both to do desktop as well as web app. It can do support both 2D and 3D, animation, audio, video playback, and so on. But for us, it is a good learning tool for object-oriented programming and specifically event-driven programming that we'll cover in the next lesson. So let's talk about JavaFX, right? The JavaFX is not included with the JDK, so there is a bit of work you need to do to set up your IDE to use JavaFX. Specifically, you need to download it and install it, add the JavaFX library to your IDE, and specify some runtime arguments. There's a link here on the IntelliJ JetBrains side for setting up IntelliJ IDE with JavaFX. All right. So let's talk about how to program a JavaFX. So we're going to create a hello world type program for JavaFX, and all that's going to do is going to create a window and a big OK button in the middle, and we'll use that as the learning tool. So the code below is the program that will give you this UI application. So let's kind of dissect it, right? So let's take it part by part. Now, every JavaFX program extends the JavaFX application class that you see here. That's what's happening here. And then the main method is no longer the interesting method as it is in console applications. It is now replaced with the start method. Actually, main method is not even needed. And sometimes it's included just for IDE compatibility, because older IDEs might complain about this. So the program starts with the start method, right? You will notice this annotation at override annotation. This is a good practice to put above anything that you're overriding. It tells the reader that, hey, this is something that is being overridden. And it also tells the compiler the same thing, and it allows the compiler to raise an error if the method name might have a typo in it, right? So that it kind of helps you during compile time, right? So as I said, main method is no longer where the program starts, but you might need to include it. And here, all the main method has is this launch method call. Launch is a method of application, and it basically calls that. Essentially, you're getting the same thing anyway with start, so you don't really need to include it. I've included here. In the rest of the lesson, I will no longer have it. Okay. Then the structure of the program is consists of a couple of objects, right? So let's talk about each of them. The stage object, and I'll show it in the code, is the name for the window itself, right? And this is, you don't have to do anything about it. It's automatically created for you by the JVM and passed into start. So let's look at it here. You'll notice you're getting a stage object as part of it. It's created for you. You don't have to do anything specifically. You just have to use it. Okay, and the next one is the scene object, where you provide the width and height that can be created and placed into the stage using the setScene method, right? So let's look at that. So we've created a scene here, which is, well, first, let me talk about one more thing, so it'll be easier to talk about the code. We're using a button object, and that is also created, and it's put inside in the scene, right? So you'll know, you're putting the button in the scene, you're putting the scene onto the stage. That is the order of things. So let's actually look at the code and how that's done. So we're getting the stage here from the JVM, right? And then we're creating a button object using a constructor. We are passing a string here which is the string that's put on the button, which is OK. And then we're taking the button and we're putting it on the scene. The scene is what the primary job here is to determine the size of the window. It's 200 by 200, and that's why the window looks like looks. We can set the title of the window to be Hello World, and then we use the set scene to put the scene onto the stage. And there's the last thing here that's a show, which actually shows the window, right? So that is the program. So actually, let's try this out in code and see what it looks like. So we'll fire up IntelliJ. I have nothing here. And so I am going to paste my code. The only thing up there is a package that I happen to have put this in, and it is exactly the same code. So let's just run it. So it'll take a little bit of time for the window to pop up. So let's just wait for it a little bit here. Here we get it. There are some warning messages that you may or may not get depending on the version of the library that you're using. Those can largely be ignored. So here's the title, and there's one button here that doesn't really do anything right now, but that's the code. Okay, so we will stop that and close this and go back to the lesson. Okay, so now let's extend this a little bit and let's create multiple windows. So now I had said that a stage is what represents a window. So if you create several stages, you should get several windows. So now let's look at another program where we are doing this. So now notice I've removed the main because we really don't need it. And it is the same program. The only difference is I've created a new stage. The first one we're getting created by the JVM, so you get that. Now here you can create another one. You can set its title, and then you can put a little cancel button on it. We're not saving the button in a variable. We're just constructing it and passing it in. And the size is a little bit different. This was 200 by 200. This window is going to be a little wider. And then we just say show. So we have to call show for each one of the stages. And if you run the program, if everything goes well, it should look like this. This is your original window, and then this is the cancel window. It's a little wider, then it is taller. So let's copy this and run this. We're going to replace the previous one here with this one. And we'll run it in a little bit. We should see the two windows appear. Here's the cancel one, and here is the one for OK. Again, they're not really doing anything. We'll get to that in event-driven programming, but you're getting two stages or two windows. Okay. So one thing you would have noticed in this example is that the buttons that we've created are taking up the whole window. So both the cancel and the OK button occupy the whole window instead of the buttons that we're used to, which are just around the text that is provided. So to actually create proper buttons, we need to introduce the concept of a pane and the concept of a node, right? So let's talk about this. And this might seem a little complicated, but once you start using it in code, it becomes more intuitive, right? So again, to allow you to control the position and size of buttons, we will use something called pane objects, right? Then we also introduce the concept of a node. So node is a visual object, such as it could be lines and circles and rectangles, or it could be an image as a picture, or it could actually be a control, a UI control, such as a checkbox or a button that we are, kind of used to using, right? So you place nodes inside a pane. So I talked about what a node is. These are all the visual elements, and you put them inside a pane, right? And then you put the pane inside the scene. So, and then the scene in turn is displayed on the stage. So we're getting kind of a hierarchy of these things. Is the most basic level. You have elements like drawings and images and UI controls. These are called nodes. Those nodes are put in pane objects. The pane objects are put into scenes, and then the scenes are put onto the stage. So that's kind of the hierarchy, right? And you will, you can see this, although it might seem a bit confusing. You can see this in UML here, where you have nodes, right, which have the are control objects and can have images and can have shapes through something called a parent class, right? And they are put in panes, and then panes are put in scenes, and scenes are put in stages, right? Don't worry about all the different kind of panes we have. We will get to that in actually the very next lesson when we talk about placement of elements on a window. Okay, so a scene can control can contain controls directly, or it can contain panes. But notice it can't really you can't really put an image or a shape directly on the scene. Don't worry too much about that. As you start using it, it'll become a lot more intuitive. You can create a scene using a constructor, right? You can create a scene using a constructor, and then you can provide this parent object to put in there, and a parent object can have the actual elements that you want to display. You can provide a width and height, or you can use default width and height, right? A pane can have any type of node, right? So let's just kind of, it might seem all very complicated, but the best thing is let's just write a little piece of code to understand all of this. Okay, so what we want to do in this example is just kind of go back and create a proper button, see kind of how that's done. So let's actually look at the code and then we'll try it out, right? So here what I'm using is a kind of pane called a StackPane. Don't worry too much about it, but the thing is that it allows, using a pane allows me to have a proper shape of a button, right? So I need to use a pane to show a proper button and be able to control where it goes, right? So I'm creating a pane for use. I create a button just like before, right? Then a pane, you can put a whole bunch of kind of nodes in there. So I am going to get the children object of the pane and add my OK button to it, right? And then I'm going to put the pane onto the scene, and then the scene onto the stage, and then show the stage, right? So that is what is going on. If you run this, you should now get a nice proper button, right? So as I said, a StackPane object is the object that's created. The node here is the button, and that is added to the collection that are the children of the pane. And the StackPane places the nodes at the center by default, because it's a StackPane. That's the behavior a StackPane has. And if you were to put more things on the children, it puts it like a stack. It'll put it one on top of another. Now here we're only using one object, so we don't have to kind of worry about that. And a StackPane has this property that it respects the preferred size, right? So the buttons appear correctly. So preferred size would be just the amount of size to take up to around the text. So it'll show up like a proper button, right? So actually, let's try this out and see what this looks like in real life. So we'll take this. We will take our previous code and we'll just overwrite it. And then see what happens. So when it runs, we should get a nice window with a button in the middle, which is what we get. So this now looks more like the button that we're used to. Okay, so we'll close this and close this, and then let's get back. Now we have a simple button. Now let's get back and let's look at you doing some other things instead of just putting the button in here. Let's draw something. So let's draw a circle, like drawing a circle, and put it in there. So what would the code for that look like? So it's fairly simple. So what we're doing here is we create a circle object, right? With a constructor, we set its center, we set its radius, we set the line we use to draw the circle to be black. We set the fill inside the circle to be white. Create a pane. Just now and we add the circle to the pane, to the children of the pane, and then we just show it as before. So if we do this, you will you know, it will look something like this. A couple things to note about the circle is that the center is 100, 100. So what does that mean? So when we're in UI, the coordinate system starts with a 0, 0 at the top left corner, and it kind of, you know, it increases as we go to the right and as we go down. So 100, 100 is somewhere like here, right? So that's the center, right? And the radius is 50 pixels. That kind of gives you about half the space between here and the edge is 50. The stroke is another word for line, all right? We chose it to be black. The fill is what the color inside, which is white, right? And the pane object is the default pane object we're using, and this is introducing the Java coordinate system. So let's copy this and run this and just kind of see what it looks like. Okay, and let's run this. We should get a little circle. Okay, and we'll play with other colors and things like that in a bit, so I won't modify it. So actually, that's the very next thing we'll do. So let's go back and see what else we can do. Actually, we'll play with the image and show images, and then we'll play with colors and lines and things like that. So suppose we want to display an image, a picture. We need to use something called an image class, which represents the graphical image to use. There's another class called ImageView, right, which is the node for displaying that image. So that's the thing that we'll have to create, put the image inside it. So ImageView object is created using an image object, either from a URL or directly. So in this case, I have a link to a mole image, and I'll show that picture. So let's just look at the code, and then we'll look at what it would look like. So here I'm creating an image object, and there is this file called mole.png, right? And now I get my image object. Then I'm creating the node, which is ImageView. I use the image to create the image view. Of the view, I set the X and Y, which is, I'll talk about that, which is a position where the image would be put, which is, the top left-hand position of where the image would go. And then I just basically add the view to the children of the pane, and the pane onto the scene onto the stage, and we show it. So this is a copy of a mole, such as like a whack-a-mole, and this is what it'll show. And the 50-50 is basically the top left-hand position to put the image, right? So it's the upper left corner of the image. That's why it's 50-50. So let's actually try this out. If you look at IntelliJ, I'll show you where the image file is. So let me first just go and replace the code. Fairly simple code. I do have this mole.png right here, right? So it's right here. So let me run this and let's see what it looks like. So that's what it is. This is an image that's about this big, and the 50-50 is right over here. Let's stop this, and let's go back to the thing. Now, so far, we have learned about two types of panes, the superclass pane and the subclass StackPane. Let's go back and take a look at the UML real quick. There was a superclass pane, concrete class, and then there is a bunch of subclasses. The StackPane is the one we use, which places nodes one on top of another. There are other ones that have different behaviors. Let's just very briefly talk about it. We go into a lot more detail later. So there is the base class of all, and it contains getChildren that we have used, and it returns a list of nodes that belong that have been placed on the pane. There's StackPane that places nodes one on top of another. So if you had a button and an image, it will put them one on top of another in the order that they were added. There is FlowPane, which arranges nodes horizontally from left to right, or vertically top to down, and that just keep on adding it. Once the row is filled up, it starts a new row. Once a column is filled up, it starts a new column, right? There's a GridPane. Exactly what it is. It puts things in a matrix, and then you can use coordinates to put things in various places. There's BorderPane, which has 5 regions where you can put things. You can put things at the top and bottom, left and right, or the center, right? HBox pane is basically a horizontal placement pane. VBox is a vertical. There is a placement pane, right? So the next thing, the one thing we haven't talked about is shapes, and lines and circles and text and how that works, right? So the abstract base class shape contains, common properties such as fill and stroke, which is a line. The stroke width is the line width, right? And then there are various concrete classes that implement these things in various ways. So let's talk about most of them. So there's something called text class, which defines a node to display strings in the application, in the window, and you give it a position, right, starting at X and Y. Right, so if your window is like this, right, so the coordinate system starts at 0, 0 on the top left-hand side, right, and the width and height of the window will take the grid system to the bottom right-hand corner. If you give it X, Y, that's where the text would be displayed, right? Right, there is line, which is a concrete class for showing a line. Starts at XY coordinate point and ends at XY coordinate point that you provide, right? Window. Rectangle shows a rectangle at a particular position, and you give it a width and height, right? Additionally, you can give it AW for arc width and AH for arc height, which kind of allows you to show some curvature in its corners, right? Their circle we have already talked about, that has a center and a radius. There's ellipse that allows you to is very much like a circle, except it gives you you can give it radius X and radius Y because it might be longer or taller, right? There's also something called arc, which shows a partial ellipse. There's a polygon, which is with a sequence of connecting points. That is a closed shape. A polyline is like a polygon, except it is not closed. So let's try some of these things out. Basically, we'll draw some text which says here are some shapes. We put it at a particular place. We make it blue. We draw a line, which is a green color line, which is a little bit thicker. 5 is the width of it. It starts at 300 and 100 and goes back to 50 and 250, right? We'll see that. We have to draw a rectangle with position and width and height. It's going to be orange. Fill color be orange rectangle, and it'll have curved corners, right? There's a circle in this position with radius 50, and then it's light filled with light blue. There'll be ellipse with pink line. Inside would be white, and then we put them all in a pane. We put the pane in the scene, and a scene in a stage as before. So what might this look like? Actually, to surprise you, let's just run it. That might be more fun. So let's just go open this, right, and then we'll replace we'll have to replace the imports too, because different set of things being imported. So let's just run this and see what happens. We should get lots of nice pretty things. So it gave you the blue text, it gave you the circle, gave you the rectangle with curved edges, and the green thick line, and the pink ellipse, right? So that is what we expected to see anyway. Okay, so this has been a lesson on UI elements and UI programming for Java. Thank you.